going on, guys? This is Richie here from the Red Planet Films, bringing you my movie review for Adam Wingard's The Blair Witch, which was actually a secret project known as The Woods originally, but around Comic-Con time, I believe, they were kind of just like, hey, you know what? This is actually a sequel to The Blair Witch, and people kind of lost their minds. So in that regard, it was kind of similar to the original 1999 Blair Witch project, whereas a whole bunch of viral marketing went behind that film. That was one of the first times that a movie actually used viral marketing. Back in the days when internet was very limited, we didn't have a lot of access to some of the stuff that we have now. Quite literally everything is within the palm of our hands now. Back then, there was always that sense of realism for the Blair Witch Project. A lot of people thought that the movie was real. When they premiered the film in some film festivals, the filmmakers actually went out of their way to put up missing poster flyers around the area of the three actors in the movie. And there was just a sense of legitimacy, so much so that even if you read through like some forums and IMDb trivia and all that stuff, you'll see that people sent sympathy cards to Heather's mother, or people were just actually scared of the supposed Blair Witch. There was just that sense of realness to it. Fast forward 20 some odd years later, and of course that skepticism is pretty much blown out of the water because now we all know that it's all fake. However, it's just had this whole cult following so many years that it's still being talked about to this day. And I can assure you that even I still talk about it to this day because I hold that film in very high regard. In my opinion, that is one of the scariest films of all time. Because the first time I saw it, I think I was about 7 or 8 years old, back when VHS tapes were popping. There was no DVD, there was no Blu-ray, there was no 4K. We had VHS, VCRs, and we had these big, fat, tube, ugly televisions with glass screens. A lot of people may not even know what I'm talking about, and that's kind of sad. But I mean, it's a whole different generation, a whole different time. Even though it doesn't seem that long ago, but I digress. So watching that film when I was a lot younger, it just got burned, just etched into my memories, into my brain, and I thought that it was real. I watched that VHS so many times to try and just pause on certain areas to see if I could see something, if I could see like what was just tormenting the three main characters of that film, trying my hardest just to really just pinpoint every, just second, just observe everything as much as I could. And, there wasn't really much that you could find because they didn't show you anything. Granted, yes, there is no sound, there is no music, there is no crazy transitions, etc., etc. that moviegoers or the younger crowd nowadays might not appreciate, Because horror movies, let's be honest, is all cliche-ridden. It's been watered down. It's been done to death. It's gone. Horror has not been the same. Take somebody from this generation and have them watch The Blair Witch Project, and they might say it's the worst film of all time. I beg to differ. I love the aspect of less is more, and I really enjoyed just the way that The Blair Witch Project did its thing, because it was pretty much the first of its kind. And if you think about it almost in a sense, it's almost like the first form of vlogging, because we get to see these three characters, their lives for X amount of days, and they get lost in the woods, and then just stuff starts happening. And the Blair Witch Project, those last 15-20 minutes of the film is one of the scariest endings to any movie. The way that it just ends is so eerie, just so ominous, and just so terrifying, because you don't see what happened to them. They get clobbered over the head. One of the characters is standing in the corner, and that's it. So in Adam Wingard's The Blair Witch, it tells the story of a main character named James, and he wants to find out what happened to his sister. His sister being the main character of The Blair Witch Project, Heather. So he sets out on this journey to go and explore the woods with a couple of his friends, and they see this video posted up on YouTube by a user by the name of Darknet666. So he tracks him down. His name is Lane, and he lives with his girlfriend named Talia. They all kind of just band together, and they go out and explore the woods in Burkittsville, where the Blair Witch is. And that's pretty much kind of where stuff starts happening. I can't quite delve into spoilers just yet. I will get to that eventually in a second. but I will warn you, so don't worry. Yes, it does mirror a lot of, well, majority of the stuff from the Blair Witch Project. However, it does it in its own way in the sense that it really takes advantage of the technology that we have nowadays, because 1999 to 2016, a whole heck of a lot of technology has come out since then. So we're able to do more. And there is a really cool thing that they implement in this film, and it's drones. And they're able to use it to get these cool overhead tracking shots and everything like that, and to just see their surrounding areas. And that does come into play later on in the film. And they use these other cameras that kind of look like Bluetooth pieces, and that's their way to kind of wiggle around the, the whole like POVs type stuff, you know what I mean? So it's kind of cool that they implemented something like that. I wasn't sure how to feel about this movie going in. I was hyped for it, especially when it was revealed that this was a follow-up to the Blair Witch Project. So I was like, oh, I'm game. Like, let's go. The trailer was very well edited. However, I just didn't want to get my hopes up too high, because there is always just that chance that they might fail. Adam Wingard is a fantastic filmmaker, but just whenever they take a property from days gone by and bring it to life in present day, doesn't always necessarily work out the way that one might want it to. So I kind of wanted to go into it blind as well. I saw that first trailer, that was it. I avoided anything else because I just wanted to go into this movie fresh. Your best bet is to watch the Blair Witch Project beforehand, then go watch this film, so then you can kind of, compare and contrast and see how they expand upon the mythology of the first film, which they do tremendously in this movie towards the latter half of the film and the ending. However, this film, like I did make mention of, is that it mimics a lot of the stuff from the original, but it just seems as though it takes a lot longer to build up to that big crescendo, unlike the first film. Because the first film, again, it was the first of its kind. So you kind of can't really help that. You can't help but make those comparisons, you know what I mean? With all that being said, now I'm going to get into the spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen this film, please go watch it. Go watch the Blair Witch Project first. Watch this film. Come back. So then you can further analyze my thoughts and opinions, and then we can have a better conversation in the comment section down below. So moving right along, I had actually originally filmed this movie review last night. However, for some odd reason, the microphone was muted. Somehow in the settings, it just got muted. So I went on this whole full tangent nerd mode of this film. It was like a 30-minute in-depth review, but in retrospect, it would have been too long. So it was kind of good that I was able to just sleep on this film, wake up, kind of analyze my thoughts again, and then really, now I feel like this is a more efficient, more reliable, trustworthy review. So anyways, I saw this movie with a couple of my friends, and I don't really think that they appreciated nor understood the original Blair Witch Project. Either that, or they haven't seen it, or they just haven't seen it in a long time. As a filmmaker myself, I appreciate some of the behind-the-scenes stuff and the other expanded stuff that they do after the film or to promote the film. Case in point, with the viral marketing of this movie, there were a couple of different websites that were put up that showed alternate footage of all these people from the town just kind of banding together to go on this whole manhunt to find these 3 kids. Kind of how Screen Junkies put it in their honest trailer for the Blair Witch Project. It was like the original catfishing, so to speak. I didn't know what catfishing was for the longest time. I don't keep up with this stuff. I don't think they quite really appreciated or understood some of the mythos behind the original Blair Witch Project as much as I did. So going into this movie, I knew what to look for. I knew what to kind of observe. Towards the middle, maybe the later half of the film, a friend of mine kind of turned to me and was like, oh, you actually like this sort of stuff? And yes, I did. Granted, there was a lot of stuff actually that I didn't really like about this movie, and that was the first part of the film. I didn't have any personal gripes with it, but it just almost mimicked it too much, and I didn't believe some of the acting. I thought they were overacting a little bit in some points, and it just took a little too long. Once stuff starts actually happening, that's when it gets interesting. And a huge kudos to the sound department of this film, because there were a lot of sound effects that were, one, completely disgusting, Number two, pretty creepy, and it really just gives you that vibe that, okay, I'm lost in the woods too with these people. Okay, there's something around here. There were so many times where I was asking myself, like, what the heck is that? Because there's these loud booms. It sounds like trees are falling. It sounds like there's a giant freaking, like, person just roaming around, like, the woods. Like, it's just these loud thumps and, like, these growls. You hear these howling, like, witches kind of, like, singing in the distance. It's very creepy stuff. I'm not going to lie to you. Did it freak me out? Did it scare me? No. Because, yes, it may be creepy, but it's a little bit cheesy, too. It doesn't quite meet up. It's not on par as the original, where, yes, there was absolutely no sound, no music, but it just had that visceral realness to it. That's what made it feel, just made you feel so helpless. So this movie didn't quite capture that same feel as the original, and I hate to kind of just talk so much about the original and what they did, because this movie's trying to be its own thing while paying tribute to the original and acknowledging a lot of the stuff that happened in that movie. So it's not really fair, but I just can't help but kind of compare and contrast. So moving right along, when James and his friends get into the woods, it turns out that the people that he met up with, Lane and his girlfriend Talia, have actually never been to these woods as they claim they have been. So James's friend Peter pretty much just banishes them. He tells them to go their own separate ways. So it's literally all down to just James, Ashley, Peter, and this other girl named Lisa. And earlier in the movie, they were crossing the stream to get more deeper into the woods, and Ashley punctured her foot on something in this little ravine. So throughout, she's dealing with this injury. She's not feeling well. She has a fever. It's infected. It's disgusting. That kind of went along with what I said with the sound department. There was some stuff popping off with her foot, and every time she walked, it just sounded like it was breaking. It just sounded just very brutal, so that's what was kind of gross about it. There's a scene where they try to use the drone to see exactly where they're at. It's nighttime, but they can't really see anything. There's no roads, nothing around. It's just all desolate forest. Like they were just plopped in the middle of some random island. The drone crashes, and that comes later on into play when Ashley just leaves her own separate way when they get separated, and she tries to fish the drone out of a tree, and she falls down, but it looks like something attacked her. Can't quite really see, but definitely something attacked her, and she's gone. But to sort of rewind a little bit, when stuff starts happening, when it's just James, Ashley, and Lisa, Peter had gone missing because he went to go find some firewood, and a tree fell on him, and he gets taken away. James went out to go look for him, but he couldn't find him. All he found was his flashlight. Lane and Talia come back. They claim that they've been roaming around the woods for about 5 days, but the sun hasn't come up. Whereas James and his friends, it only seems as though it's just been like 1 day for them. So they were confused. They were like, oh, just cut it out. Like, stop lying to us again. And Lane just goes his own separate way. He leaves his girlfriend, and Talia decides to stay with them. So Ashley comes out of her tent. She's confused. She doesn't know what happened to her boyfriend Peter. She's sick. She sees Talia. She's like, what are you doing here? And there's a really interesting scene, and this is sort of where stuff starts picking up, where Talia notices from one of like the little stick things that are hanging in the trees that her hair is in it. So she takes it off the tree, but Ashley's just like, you know what, like, you're the one who started this. So she grabs the thing out of her hand and she snaps it, and since it had a bit of her hair in it, it was almost like a voodoo doll in a sense, and this was a very cool scene where Talia herself just snaps in half. The reason that they got separated, by the way, was because Lane and Talia had lied to them. They set up all these different twig men in the trees so James and his friends can believe that the Blair Witch was true. So they staged this whole thing. So that's why they were banished from their group in the first place. So after Ashley accidentally kills Talia, that's when stuff starts happening. You hear all these sort of crazy sounds going off in the woods. I don't know what happened to James at this point. I guess he might have gotten just separated. Tents start flying up in the air. Lisa and Ashley are running, but then they get separated. Tents just start falling down from the sky. Lisa and James meet up again, and then that's when Ashley sort of gets taken away when she was climbing the tree to get the drone out of the tree. Fast forward, James and Lisa, they stumble upon the house, and when they look up, they see this flashlight and somebody running upstairs. James says to Lisa, hey, that's my sister, like, I gotta go. And she says, like, hey, I don't know you very well, but I can assure you that is not your sister. He just can't live with it, so he decides to go inside the house while she stands outside in the pouring rain. Just okay. So while James is inside the house, a whole bunch of stuff is happening. He's trying to go through all these different doors. He sees Peter at one point. Something happens off screen, so he turns around, he turns back, Peter is gone. So he's exploring all floors and levels of this house. He goes into one room in particular that he thinks he sees his sister Heather go into, so he follows, but the door locks behind him, and he sees some odd apparition, and it's at that point where he's like, you know what, screw this, like, I gotta get out of here. Like, this isn't her, but the door's locked, but he was able to get out. Goes back to Lisa. She decides to finally make her way inside the house. She goes through a different level. She decides to go downstairs, and she meets up with Lane. But Lane looks like he's been trapped in this place for like 3 years. He's got a full-on beard and everything. And he says something along the lines of, you pretty much just have to do what the witch asks you. He clobbers her upside the head, and he drags her into this hole, locks her in there, and she finds a hole in that hole. It was like a trap door almost. So then she decides to just wiggle her way on through, and you get this really claustrophobic type feel. That was a very well done scene, and she gets out and she explores this other, it looks like sort of like a mine almost. Lane attacks her, but Lisa's able to just stab him in the throat with this little pocket knife that she had. He dies. She makes her way upstairs and she meets back up with James. When she meets back up with James, when she was on her way upstairs, she was being chased by the witch. This is one of my other problems with the movie. The original film showed you nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was all left up to imagination, and I find that to be a lot more scarier than actually seeing something that comes from somebody else's brain, because what somebody else might think is scary, someone else might not. Case in point, a film called The Babadook that I believe came out last year or the year before. I found nothing very stellar about that movie, and I was very hyped for it, but it just disappointed me in general. I get some of the certain themes and aspects of that film that they were trying to portray with some of the characters, but it just did nothing for me, especially the monster. I didn't find anything creepy about it at all. Whereas I feel if they would have gone a different route and didn't really show it quite as much as they did, it would have been a lot more effective. And that's kind of what I'm trying to make a point with in this film, where there are brief moments where you see I guess it is the Blair Witch, just this sort of tall, ugly, lanky, Slenderman looking woman, just flesh and like disgusting looking hair, zipping her way past in like these little shots. And yes, it's ugly, but I didn't like that they kind of gave that away. When Lisa finally meets up with James, they close themselves upstairs in an attic. And there's one scene where this giant ominous light just comes peering in through the attic. And for a second I'm like, I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's definitely aliens. So James has this idea to just stand in the corner and not make eye contact with it. And that's where they kind of expand upon the mythos from the original movie. Why was one of the characters in the original standing in that corner when Heather found him downstairs in the basement? And I guess it's because he just didn't want to look at her. If you don't look at her, like, she can't hurt you, she can't kill you, if you don't look at her directly in the eyes. So they're both standing in the corner, and James is apologizing to Lisa, saying that he's so sorry. And at one point he just stops, and then he's like, Heather, is that really you? In which Lisa asks him, James, like, who are you talking to? He turns around and the witch gets him. Like, he's done, because I guess he just looks right at her. So she's there, frozen by herself, Lisa, in this corner. But what she does is very smart. She takes the camera that she's holding and she twists the viewfinder so she's able to see behind her. She's trying to make her way, walking backwards. She's not making eye contact with her. She's able to just see what's in her viewfinder, to see her surrounding behind her, because she has to walk backwards out of this area. As she's making her way out, she thinks she hears James, so she turns around and boom, it ends almost exactly the same way that the original did, in the sense that you don't see what got her, and the camera just drops on the floor, it's completely quiet, and then it just cuts to the credits. Overall, I still don't quite know what to make of this movie. I think I might have to see it again. Did I enjoy it? Yes, certain aspects of it, but in the first half of the film, it was too long of a build-up. The one thing that I will give kudos to them is that there definitely seems to be something a little bit off. In the YouTube video that they found earlier, right in the beginning of the movie, there is a frame that James pauses in the video where you can see the reflection of a girl in a mirror wandering through this house. Fast forward to the end of the film when Lisa's trying to meet up with James, she's running around the house and you see a frame where she walks past this mirror, and it is the exact moment that James paused in that YouTube video in the beginning of the movie. So the whole timeline is messed up, or either it's that these whole woods are just so screwy themselves that it uses that to manipulate and play with the audience's mind and just really just bring up all these other different questions. I might be game for a sequel if it's done a little bit better. And another one of my gripes with this movie were the jump scares. The most pointless, god-awful jump scares. This movie did not need them. They're in a setting that is creepy enough as it is already, but there are a lot of moments, like 5 or 6 right off the bat, of people just walking right on camera, or screaming, or the horrendous sound that happens when you brush your finger across the microphone of like a DSLR camera. And some of the effects and transitions that were used in this movie, like the camera glitches, yes, I understand that, because sometimes maybe some of those cameras might have that error, but it doesn't happen very often like that. And that kind of did annoy me a little bit. I'm just kind of disappointed with this movie. I wanted a little bit more than what I was given. I did walk away with some stuff that I didn't like about this movie, especially the last act of the film, last 20-15 minutes of the movie, just like the original. How it just really draws you in. That's when stuff really starts happening. But it just seems as though there's a couple of little things and major things that seem to outweigh all those positives that I took away from this movie. Again, I think I might have to just go back and watch it one more time in the theater. The theater is definitely the best experience to see this movie, unless you have some, like, $1 million surround system in your house. Then okay, then wait, good for you. Overall, I'm just going to have to give this movie a solid C. So thank you all for tuning in. If it wouldn't be too much to ask, please hit the like button on this video. Let's try to shoot to at least 10 likes. The last movie review that I did for Don't Breathe gathered a whole bunch of views in a short amount of time. It was like a week and a half or 2 weeks, it got to like 300. But it was just a very overwhelming amount of views in such a short amount of time. So if maybe we can replicate the same thing with this video, or at least get a little bit more likes than our couple other videos I've been getting, that would be swell. Give this video a thumbs up, favorite it, share with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, wherever. Leave a comment down below. Tell me what you thought of this film, what you think of the original, where do you think it kind of holds up with the whole mythology. And if you're going to leave a spoiler, please leave a tag before your comment that says spoiler alerts in capital letters, just so in case anybody decides to rummage through the comment section, they don't get anything ruined for them if they haven't seen the movie. Check the description box down below. You will see the link to our gaming channel, the Red Planet Gaming, as well as the links to our Facebook like page, and our Twitter and Instagram accounts. And most importantly, hit that subscribe button so you can be alerted whenever we upload a new video. We do movie reviews, Blu-ray reviews, and we also have that Green Arrow fan film still coming, so make sure you check that out. Stay tuned. That's pretty much it. I'm just going to go sip on my coffee and probably watch the original Blair Witch Project to kind of get the negativity out of my mouth. Thank you all for tuning in.